And so, yes, everything from now on is being recorded. Everybody, welcome to the webinar about Leap. Um, really quickly about Leap Ventures. So we created Leap Ventures as a platform to serve you all, pet founders and pet care and tech founders and CEOs who are interested in connecting with one another and finding resources to grow your startup. This is a joint venture between two organizations, Amy's organization, Michelson Found Animals Foundation, and Mars Pet Care and Kinship, one of the largest pet care companies in the world. We will go through what each of them are in a second. At a high level, I just want to, why you're all here is to learn more about our two programs, Leap Venture Academy, which is for early stage startups, and Leap Venture Studio. We're going to do a deep dive into each of these coming up, but just a reminder, these are the two things that we're going to be chatting about in this webinar. Amy, do you want to chat a little bit about what the Michelson Found Animals Foundation is?
Sure. So we are a nonprofit, private operating foundation, but we like to say that nonprofit is just our tax status, not reflective of how we operate our programs. We're based in Los Angeles, and we do a variety of things. We have two social enterprise businesses, one that is national. We do microchips and scanners for shelters and rescues and spay-neuter clinics all over the country. And we have millions of pets and owners in the free registry that we maintain as part of that program. And then locally, we have two retail stores where we do pet adoptions of pets that we pull from local municipal shelter partners, and then also sell products in the store, so toys and treats and beds and all of that stuff. And in our larger location, we have daycare and grooming. So we have both a B2B business in the animal welfare space, and we have a B2C retail component, and then we have these millions of pet owners in our microchip registry. So we are always looking for products, programs, and services that support the human-animal bond in all of those realms, and that is how we come to Leap. So we actually do make investments in the Leap companies. It's a program-related investment from the nonprofit, and so we do look for companies that have that mission alignment where you really are supporting humans and animals and having an impact.
Do you want to? Okay.
You can keep going. So
okay.
These are a few of the things that we bring to bear for our Leap Venture Studio. Dan, I'll come back to your question in a second. For our Leap Venture Studio, which is in LA, we have adoptable dogs and cats, we have a volunteer and foster base and our staff, and we have retail locations, all of which can be great for product testing of various sorts. We have a captive audience. So for example, for one of the companies in the previous cohort, we had our dogs do taste testing on some of their new treat recipes, etc. We've had some of our staff that with cats test litter boxes and give really great detailed feedback. And then in Los Angeles, if you are wanting to open a physical location here for any reason, we really understand it. Plus, we have a space to host events. And then nationally, because we do have millions of pets and owners in the registry, and we're sending emails every week, we send millions of emails a month to our various folks, and have a ton of web traffic, we can help you test messaging, and we can help you test offers and those kinds of things. So Dan, to your question, can startups access the pet registry? The answer is maybe. We don't sell that data. We do put offers in our emails from time to time. That is a paid service. So depending on what you're looking for and what your needs are, yes, we might be able to work together. And if you want more information about that, I can talk to you offline.
Great. And then the other partner, Amy, sorry, anything else you want to mention?
Nope, that's the basics. If you guys have questions, I'm happy to answer them.
And MFA is the awesome mugs as well that Amy has.
Depending on what day it is, this is the cat with a heart. Often I have a cat's butt because we have a cat butt mug that's one of my favorites.
That's awesome. And so the other partner in Leap Ventures is Mars Pet Care and Kinship. So Mars Pet Care is one of the largest pet care companies in the world with over 44 brands. You've probably seen a bunch of them: Pedigree, Iams, Royal Canin, Banfield, VCA. Within the Mars portfolio, we have 5 of the $10 billion brands. 60% of all the dogs and cats in the developed world are fed by our products, and we have 70,000 plus what we call associates who are working across all those divisions. And so Kinship is the newest division of Mars Pet Care, and it's really focused on innovation in the pet care space. And so Kinship is the main partner with MFA in the LEAP program. We're all about trying to bring the best new ideas and startups to the forefront and helping them get connected to the ecosystem. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about Leap Venture Academy, and definitely hear your questions as we are going, and we'll answer them as they come up. So we know that I'm sure you all feel this pretty, it resonates with you pretty well. Pet care entrepreneurs need a lot of help, from mentorship to business infrastructure to go-to-market expertise. We know that you guys every day are waking up and are looking for those connections and resources to move the needle on your company as much as you can. And so we created Leap Venture Academy. And what Leap Venture Academy is a series of pre-accelerator and community building activities really geared towards creating those connections and those collisions between you and other people in this ecosystem. Events are held year-round, in both in person and online. This webinar is an example of what we're trying to do with Leap Venture Academy. And our activities include webinars like this, pitch competitions. We had our first pitch competition 2 weeks ago at Super Zoo, which actually one of our competitors online was there. Boot camps, classes, webinars, meetups, hackathons. Literally, we are trying anything and everything and experimenting to do things that you guys want. This is all for people like you. And most of the events will be free and open to the public. This is kind of a list of what we're planning. You're going to get access to all these slides if you want to go, in depth later on and kind of read more closely. You'll have access to all this kind of stuff. But right now it looks like we're doing a couple events a month, a mix of all the stuff that you see on the screen here, and everything. You can find on our website, leapventurestudio.com. Right now, I think there are about 6 or 7 classes that are live. The upcoming classes in our for Leap Venture Academy next 2 weeks. 2 weeks from today, we'll have an Ask a Vet session. We'll have 2 veterinarians on, and startups like yourselves can come and ask them questions about what you're doing and get feedback from them directly. One of Amy's partners, Phil Kim from Muxon 20 million minds. 20. Okay. I forgot what the we'll be hosting an awesome webinar on funding options for early stage pet care startups. I saw him do this a couple months ago, and it just really is interesting, and he'll share his experience and insights into what it's like to fundraise in the pet care space and in general outside of the pet care space as well.
Yeah, I'll give a plug for this, which is Phil runs a lot of the investment screening for the family office that is part of our Michelson family of organizations. And so he has seen the fundraising market, not just in pet care, but in other places. And so really has a good sense of what all of the various mechanisms and options are, but then also about sort of what is market right now, and what are founder friendly terms that investors aren't liking at the moment, and what are things that investors will give founders. So this is going to be really useful, and I would encourage you to attend if you've got fundraising anywhere in your future.
And then another one that's coming up is how to select a co-manufacturer from a startup perspective. So we have a lot of startups that are trying to create new products, treats, or food, and they want to go through what's called a co-manufacturer to develop them. We have 2 founders that we've worked closely over the last year and a half in our pet care ecosystem that are going to host this session about the lessons that they've learned over the last year. I know a couple of you were on with my office hours last week, and we were brainstorming new ideas. We're always open to try new things. And so, send us an idea. You guys have thank you, Ronnie just posted where the events can be found. If you have ideas on things that you want us to cover, let us know. If you want to host a session, if you have a particular expertise on something, also let us know. Really, we're trying to build this programming at Leap Venture Academy for you all.
And Ronnie, can you also put up the email address? So for people who want to connect individually with us, we do have some structured office hour opportunities. So Ronnie, can you put up where people can email you if they'd like to have office hours with either myself or Assad?
I also want to point out a couple things that are coming in the pipeline, and I haven't gotten the links yet, but we have 2 pitch competitions that we're involved in. One is at the Veterinary Innovation Summit at Colorado State University. So anybody that has a vet product, that's happening at the end of September at Colorado State. They still have a couple slots open, so if any of you want to go there, just ping me and I'll give you some information on how to apply. And then coming down the pipeline is a pitch competition in January at VMX, also another veterinary-focused conference, a huge one down in Florida, but they are actually looking for products of all types. And so if you're interested in that as well, definitely track it on the website, but shoot me a message or shoot us a message and we'll try to connect you with those application links. Both are for prize money as well. Amy, anything you want to add about Leap Venture Academy or any questions about what we're doing with the Academy out there?
I'll just say that the Academy is newer than the Venture Studio. So we ran 2 cohorts of the Venture Studio, and we'll talk about that next, but we have a limited capacity for the number of companies that we can run in the Venture Studio, and we'll talk a little bit about how we choose those companies and what that process looks like. But we heard from folks that there were lots of startups that either weren't ready for the Venture Studio or for whatever reason weren't a good fit for the Venture Studio and still wanted support because the resources weren't out there for pet care entrepreneurs and startups. And so the Academy is intended to be the more year-round, the more open access set of activities versus the Venture Studio, which we'll talk about now, which has a more limited capacity because that's just the reality of running the studio and doing the intensive that we do with these companies for 12 weeks.
Dan has a question. Are the competition events, do they require physical presence in the U.S.?
If it's a pitch competition, it typically does.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think that, if maybe we can do a online pitch competition sometime next year. That could be a fun thing. But yeah, I think you'll get the most out of it if you're actually in there in person. If you're at
so the things, the webinars and the office hours and many of those things we do virtually because we understand that time zone travel expenses and things are a challenge. The pitch competition, so for example, the one we just did at Super Zoo, I am not sure we could have in that exhibit hall made the technology work for somebody to pitch virtually. And I don't know that you would have been competitive if you had pitched virtually. So trade-offs.
Yeah. Okay, on to Leap Venture Studio, which I'm sure a lot of you guys signed on to learn about this. So Leap Venture Studio is our premier accelerator program, incubator program, however you want to describe it. And basically, it was the first one created to springboard innovation in the pet care ecosystem. We invest up to $200,000 in startups and put them through a 12-week program, really geared to move the needle on your company during the course of the program. It launched in 2018. We've so far accelerated 12 companies across 2 cohorts. It's a partnership between not only MFA and Kinship, but also our partner RGA, which is a very prestigious design firm. They run the program for us out of their LA office. The next program is going to take place starting in February, and will culminate in May. It's an application process. We'll get to that in a second. And it's open to anybody across the world. We've so far had, I think, 2 of the 12 were international companies, one from Spain and one from Mexico. Amy, do you want to chat about why you're doing?
So this is the what you get, the what's in it for you. Obviously, the funding is very nice. It's up to $200,000, and whether or not you get the full amount or some other amount depends on the stage of your company, where you're at fundraising, what you're going to use the money for, etc. While it is a non-residential program, there are key weeks that we do expect you to be on site. And if you wanted to be on site for the entire period, you do have access to workspace in Los Angeles for that entire time. What Mars and Michelson pay for, in addition to having RGA help facilitate the program, is each startup in the program gets a package of services from the RGA agency. And what those look like are slightly different for different startups, but it could look like, in the past, it's looked like redesigning a logo, coming up with consumer journey and consumer target information, redesigning key pages on a website or a key conversion flow. So RGA is a world-class design and marketing package of services within some limits from their best and brightest. The caveat is that project has to fit into a 5-week time period. So we do pick discrete things, and you will work with RGA and us to figure out what that is for your company if you're part of the studio. And then, of course, you get access to the Michelson and the Mars network. We have everything from scientific experts on our side to folks who are experts in palatability on the Mars side. Mars has a great understanding of international markets. We have a great understanding of the animal welfare market. We have a very complementary set of skills that when you put it together, we can get you a mentor or get questions answered for you in practically anything across the pet ecosystem. And then, of course, you get your fellow entrepreneurs, which many people tell us is one of the best parts of the experience. We customize everything to you. That's the RGA services product, the mentors, everything. And then you get in-kind services and discounts. So for example, for some of the companies in the previous cohort, we did some testing to our email list for free. We also did in the last cohort a photo shoot. So if you needed product shots or shots of animals using or eating your product, we did some of that for free. On the other side, Mars held a communications workshop where you got access to their global PR and communications team, and you could tee up key questions or concerns and get coaching. So it's really diverse, and it changes a little bit with every cohort. Another thing that Assad was brilliant to organize for the last cohort was a trip to the US R&D facility for a lot of the Mars pet food, where you got access to a lot of that manufacturing and palatability and other expertise. Now, if the next cohort doesn't have a lot of food companies in it, that may not be relevant, but those are the kinds of things that we can offer and that we customize based on the companies who are participating.
Awesome. And this is just a timeline of what to expect during the course of the program. So the first couple of weeks are pretty intense. We require the companies to be on site in Los Angeles, and really you'll be working, probably 1 or 2 key leaders on your team will be working 30+ hours a week to develop your company-specific plan, to connect with mentors and the other cohort, and to develop your plan of action with all 3 of the partners in the program. In the second month, you're working remotely. There are optional meetings, as Amy described, across the country, across the world. We'll have weekly webinars. You'll be working with mentors on key issues, and you'll start work with RGA on your project, and there'll be ongoing office hours. And then it sort of ramps up again towards the end of the program, where you'll be back on site. This year, you'll probably spend 1 week in LA. Did I lose you guys?
You're coming in and out, but we've got you right now.
Oh, okay. So the last couple weeks of the program will be probably 1 week in LA, and it looks like we'll finish the program off in New York. We'll have your demo day and a big investor conference to celebrate all the work that you've done. It's really one thing that I'll say is you get out of this program as much as you put in. And so if you are someone that is willing to travel, or your team is willing to travel and to have those meetings, you'll get a lot out of this program. And if not, and you just want to kind of take the basics of the program, that's fine too. But really, as much as you put in is what you'll get out. And the relationship doesn't end at the end of the program. We will continue working with you months and even years after the program. We're still working with companies that went through our first accelerator program over, I guess it was a year ago.
So we've got a couple questions, Assad. I'll read to them. So Dan wants to know what the LVS funnel looks like for the Venture Studio, and what equity percentage do you take for the program with what valuation range? So The funnel we can talk about in a second. We'll get into a little bit of who's a good fit for the program and how the application process works. And there's not a standard package in terms of equity. It's different for different companies because we have companies come in from sort of pre-seed all the way to Series A. So it's not like some other programs where there's a standard package. We will work with you and look at what your last funding round was and where you're at, and we negotiate terms individually with each of the companies in the program. You want to add anything to that, Assad?
No, I think that's 100% right. Yeah.
And then Sarah asked who usually attends Demo Day. It is a mix. So, and Demo Day next year will be very different than Demo Day was this year for a couple of reasons that Assad may want to get into or we may not be ready to talk about. But it's a mix of, firstly, people in the Mars ecosystem. So Mars is an enormous global company, and there are people that you may not get to interact with during the course of the 12 weeks, but that will come to the Demo Day. Of course, we solicit investors and press and former Leap Venture Studios folks who may be good partners. And as an example, like the head of the Southern California Veterinary Medical Association and people like that who are other types of potential partners. So it's a diverse range.
Yeah, I'll say that this year, I just got word yesterday. I haven't even told Amy yet that the pet care leadership team, the CEO and his leadership team, will be at our Demo Day this year. So that'll be exciting.
Oh no, you're cutting out. No, say that again. You cut out at the key part. I didn't hear it.
The CEO and leadership team of Mars Pet Care globally will be coming to our Demo Day. So they'll be, the people that make all the decisions at the highest level will be there at our Demo Day this year. Yeah, really exciting. Great. So you can probably see this on our website as well, but the list of startups that have gone through our program, there's 12 of them. They're quite diverse. In our first cohort, there were a couple diagnostic companies, a couple food companies, and some platform companies, and it's a good mix: direct to consumer, people that are selling into veterinarian offices, and people that are just a wide mix. And similar with our second cohort, Jiminy's is a cricket alternative protein company. SniffSpot is an app, kind of Airbnb for your backyard. Pet Relief is a CBD company. Shameless is an upcycle treats company. Smalls is a cat food subscription company, and Barkaboo, AI veterinary help and support for customers. So a wide range of companies and a good mix from all over the country and all over the world. In terms of the benefits that you get from the Leap Venture Studio, Amy's mentioned a bunch of this, but long-term relationship with us, access to mentors and advisors throughout the Mars Pet Care ecosystem, throughout MFA, throughout RGA. A relationship with other companies and alumni in the cohort. We really try to make those connections not only during the program but afterwards as well. Access to the global pet care market, specialized classes and events, and world-class design projects. We are an example of something that we're doing next week. Banfield, one of the big brands under the Mars portfolio, is having a big summit next week in Portland, Oregon, and they invited a bunch of our Leap Venture Studio companies to come and exhibit. And so, there's ongoing benefits that are always happening, and we're doing our best to.
And just to give a little more context, this Pet Healthcare Industry Summit is firstly invite only. It is a very limited audience, and it is literally the single top one or maybe two people at all of the veterinary and food companies all over the world. So to be able to get in the room with these folks is something that startups would never have access to outside of Leap. Hard time getting invited to this because it is really kept a small, intimate audience. So that's just one example of a unique opportunity that Leap companies and alumni have access to. And to be clear, the Venture Studio alumni.
Yes, correct. Amy, I'm going to have you continue going.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are we looking for? And as I mentioned earlier, there's not necessarily a specific stage of company. So we've had folks come from pre-seed and pre-launch all the way through Series A. And I think one of the benefits for you is getting to interact with entrepreneurs that are at different stages and maybe can help coach you from the entrepreneur viewpoint on what's coming next for you. But we do want you to at least have an MVP. Not because we think you won't be successful if you don't have an MVP, but because we can't provide the most benefit to you in terms of what Michelson and Mars and RGA can offer if you don't have a product that we can actually interact with and that we can actually get in front of customers or think about how to message or think about how to market. So many of these criteria are not necessarily based on whether or not you will ultimately be successful. They're based on whether or not we can provide a large amount of value to you in a 12-week program. So that's why we want you to start having some customer traction. And again, open to tech-enabled companies at a wide variety. Dan, I'll get to your question in a minute. We've had B2B and B2C business models, as you saw from the previous slide. This is the last 2 points on here are key on the right-hand side, so we'll talk through them a bit. A large enough team to allow the founder to focus on LEAP projects. A few slides back, we made it clear that during certain weeks of the program, you'll need to devote 30 hours a week to this. So if your team is not big enough that you as the founder, or ideally as the founder plus someone else, can step away from running the business for 30 hours a week and not have things crash and burn, you are going to struggle to get the most out of LEAP. As Asad said, you get out of it what you put into it. And so if your business isn't at a stage where you can take some time away to dedicate to this program, you won't get the most out of it. And that's going to be really frustrating for you and really frustrating for us. So we do make it a criteria. So there's not a team size that we sort of say, oh, if you're less than 5 people, we can't take you, because depending on your business, you could be able to step away when you've got 5 people. In other businesses, you might need 10 people before you can step away for 10 to 20 to 30 hours a week for 12 weeks straight. So there's not a one size fits all answer, but it really is know yourself and know your business enough. The worst case scenario is that we take you into the program and then you're not able to take full advantage because you can't step away from the business, or that you do take advantage of those, but then your business suffers in other ways because you stepped out. And so that kind of feeds into this last bullet point, which is a grasp on reality. Mm-hmm. So, of course, every startup comes along with this hockey stick of revenue projections, and you're going to have industry leading cost per conversion and we appreciate your passion and your enthusiasm. Of course, we want you to be passionate and optimistic, but you also need to have some grounding in reality and some coachability. You're going to get input and feedback in this program. You're going to get tough questions in this program. We need you to be open to hearing that and to maybe adjusting your expectations or adjusting your plans if what you hear from somebody is that, realistically, it's going to take you 12 months to develop that new product, not 3. And therefore, you've got an issue with your cash burn, and you've got an issue that we can help you with, but not if you're not willing to embrace that reality. Does that make sense, everybody? So on the left, we're looking for passionate and committed entrepreneurs, but your communication skills and your coachability are just as important, because again, that's how we're going to be able to help you get the most out of this program. And then companies with potential for growth and profit with some novelty. If you look at the food companies that we've had in the cohort, they all have something unique about them. It's not another flavor or another version of chicken, dog food. Like, that's not interesting to us. We want teams that we love and organizations that can have an impact. Mars's mission statement is a better world for pets. Our mission statement is saving pets, enriching lives. If you're a company who is just sort of all about making money and not necessarily about doing good for the pets and people you serve, you're probably not going to be a good fit for this program. Sarah had a question about what range of customer traction are you looking for? And I would say that again is hard to give you a specific answer, because what that looks like for like a platform company is going to be very different than what that looks like for a services company, product company, dog food. It's going to look different. But some external validation that customers actually want your product, some evidence of product market fit. Asad, do you want to expand on that at all?
Yeah, I think that it depends on how competitive your market is as well. If you're a pet nutrition company, a dog food company, and you have a lot of competitors, but you're not seeing a lot of traction yet, the question will be why. Have you not dedicated?
Oh, you cut out again, Asad.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're back. You're back.
I think the question will be why you haven't gotten the customer traction, depending on how competitive your market is. And so, we'll want to know what kind of marketing initiatives you've run and what's worked and what hasn't worked. We know that, part of the reason that you're coming into the accelerator program could be to, jumpstart your customer acquisition strategy or figure out your go-to-market strategy. So, we'll look at each company holistically, but yeah, some sort of validation of some sort, proof of demand, and ideally a willingness to pay. One other quick thing that I wanted to add to this slide is that we are definitely looking for startups that are coming to the program not for the money, but for everything else that we provide, right? We want you to be here because you want to take advantage of everything that we're providing outside of the capital. The capital is nice and great. Really what we're hoping is that the money will allow you the time to spend with us and not have to worry about fundraising while you're in the program, and allow you to test out some small things, and really focus on building the foundation of your business. Timeline. So applications for the next cohort will open September 15th, and don't worry, we'll notify all of you, and you'll hear about it quite a bit. They'll close on October 31st. We will invite the top 20 to 25 to come and pitch to us in mid-November.
And to be clear, that's going to be a virtual pitch.
Virtual pitch, yes, correct. Yep, thanks, Amy. And then we'll select startups mid-December, and then the program will start in February, and we're planning our demo day conclusion May 7th. I will say that the middle two dates, mid-November and mid-December, those are what we're aiming for, and it could slide a couple weeks here and a couple weeks there. And so if you haven't heard from us by that point, that doesn't mean that you're out. It just means that we might be there a bunch of different reasons, but generally these are what we're targeting. And the program, as a reminder, will take place in Los Angeles.
So I will pitch for you guys is if you want to hear about applications as soon as they're released, or all of our other news and events like pitch competitions, etc., please go to the website and sign up for the email newsletter. You can also follow us on any of the social media platforms and the Kinship Slack channel, which is also linked from the website. So those are the places where you can engage with us and be sure that you hear all the news hot off the presses.
At a high level, these are the kind of focus areas that we're looking at: nutrition, hardware and products, on-demand services, tools and software, medicine and supplements, and transportation. If you don't find your startup on this list, that does not mean that we're not interested in what you're doing. I would say that this is kind of a high level, what we're looking at. We're certainly looking at companies that are scalable and that can return, return our investment in you. Sarah asks, how many startups usually apply per cohort? Oh, that's a good question. I think it's somewhere between 50 and 100 that typically apply, but we look at, probably 500 to 600 and per cycle, I'm guessing.
We look at a lot, and it changes over time, so it's hard to answer that question. So obviously the first time we did this for the 2018 cohort, we were getting familiar with the entire universe. And then we have companies that, weren't ready or applied and didn't get in 18 that reapply in 19, new companies pop up. I mean, we are essentially trying to monitor as best we can a comprehensive view of the pet care startup universe. And so we will probably interact with, in some fashion, at least 100 companies in selecting who gets into the 2020 cohort.
Yeah. And then the most common problem and errors that we see, I think everybody approaches the application or interacting with startups from a different lens, and you'll have probably about 10 different people looking at your application when you apply. And so, these are kind of the biggest errors: lack of understanding of the stage that you're at, lack of understanding your value prop or significantly overstating it, lack of understanding your customer, or lack of focus. We see lack of focus is a big one that we see quite a bit. Underestimating the effort and resources required, failure to identify competition, a lack of a competitive advantage, an unproven team, lack of a robust business model, inconsistent facts and logic, and overly optimistic financial projections. Our application is a series of probably 25 questions or so, and a deck, and really we're everybody approaches it, as I said, everybody approaches it differently. I'll usually watch the video and download the deck first before going through the questions, and a big turnoff is if I see grammar errors or spelling mistakes. But I think Amy, I don't know, how do you approach the applications? What's the first thing that you do?
Me?
Yes.
So I tend to look and see if you have a website. Because if you're not at a stage where you have a website that at least is in some way appealing or explicative of who you are and what you do, that's a red flag for me. I don't expect your site to be fully optimized, but to have a site and to have it give me a sense of who you are is important to me. And then, like Assad, I will go to your deck. And again, for those of us who look at lots of these, when you flip through a deck, you really quickly get an idea of where you have more questions and what the strengths and weaknesses of a company are. And then I go back and read the detailed narrative.
Nice. There are some applications that you just know when you read them that they're not taking this seriously, and there are others that you can tell have spent the time. Dan says, is it better to apply earlier and update applications as we progress, or is it better to apply at the end of the application window with the most updated traction? That's a great question. I think I don't think that we've decided whether or not dates that we're going to review the application. So I would say it's probably better to wait closer to the end, because I think more people will review your application, and there won't be a way for people to update applications after they've been submitted. So, yeah.
So I would say if you think that there is going to be a meaningful amount of progress in that 6-week period that applications are open, or if you have a key milestone that is happening in that time period, I would wait until towards the end and submit the most complete package that you can.
Christine, will the recording be made available? Yes. Yeah, I'll send out everything hopefully later this afternoon, including a link to this recording and probably a link to an earlier one as well. Amy, you want to talk about the Found Animals leadership team?
Sure, great. So you see me, who you've met, and then my chief of staff is sort of our quarterback internally for Leap Things, and will help connect you to various departments within Found Animals and our partner network, depending on what your needs are. And then Phil Kim is the gentleman who is doing the funding workshop on September 23rd. He, as I said, sort of straddles between the family office for Dr. Michelson, who is our founder and funder, as well as one of the other nonprofits, 20 Million Minds, that also has an accelerator program in the ed tech space. So he is our resident investment expert and handles sort of the finance and investment side of the things that we do for Leap.
And then on our side, me, then Ben Jacobs, who is the founder and CEO of Whistle before it was sold to Mars, and now he leads our venture and partnership arm. And so he's definitely in tune with what's going on in the ecosystem and heavily involved with everything Leap. And then Winston Wong, who with Amy founded this program, and now he's runs our internal incubation arm called Kinship Labs, and he's also involved in what goes on. And then you can read about these people on their online, but these are the other people that are heavily involved with what goes on day to day during the course of the Venture Studio program. And Dylan is probably the biggest, the most recognized or most involved of everybody on a day-to-day basis.
So we have a couple of questions, Asad. So from Katie, should we assume that everyone evaluating the decks is already fairly familiar with the pet market? Yes, that is a safe assumption. If there is something that is unique to your niche that you think we need to know in order to understand your value proposition or your competitive advantage, please do include that. But everybody all gets the size of the pet market, the different segments of the pet market, the general stuff. Everybody will be familiar. Lauren asked, at what stage is the equity percentage typically determined? So the way the process works is if you are one of the companies that is, let's call it a finalist, at that kind of, Asad, early to mid-December timeline, that's when the conversation will start about the investment terms. And we'll make sure that both parties can agree before we sort of publicly announce or finalize who's in the program. Does that answer your question, Lauren? So that's part of why from December, between that mid-December timeline and when the program kicks off in February, we got to get all of those details worked out before we actually launch and announce.
This is a slide that I was working on prior to this thing, just so everybody could kind of get a better sense. And it's a work in progress and whatnot, but just kind of so everybody kind of knows where they stand and how we look at the ecosystem. And it's not, again, a work in progress, but, you know, if you're an idea, MVP, early stage company, really the Leap Venture Academy is for you. And if you are early revenue and repeatable, you know, we want to talk to you about the Leap Venture Studio. That's not to say that we might not play earlier or later, but I would say this is typically, you know, 75% of the companies that we deal with, this is kind of right for them.
Yeah.
And MRR means monthly recurring revenue for those who aren't aware. And with that, we'll take more questions. And also, yeah.
Does anybody have questions about this? It's the first time I've seen that slide, and it's super helpful, Asad.
Great.
All right. So we would love to connect with you guys and to keep in touch. So you are welcome to come find Asad or I on LinkedIn. We would be happy to connect with you there. There is also Leap Ventures has a LinkedIn where we announce and post things, as well as the Twitter, the Slack channel, and the newsletter. So lots and lots of ways that you can be sure to hear all the latest and greatest.
Any other questions?
Dan wants to know about the boot camp. Great question. Asad, do you want to take that one?
Sure, yeah. So one of the ideas that we've been floating around with for quite a while is doing a boot camp for pre-accelerator startups. And so we are aiming to hold one in October in Los Angeles for 4 days. And we are going through and trying to figure out, there's been a lot of interest, and so we're trying to figure out which group of people we're most interested in inviting. And so we're actually trying, we're building the plane as we're flying it. We're trying to figure all that stuff out. But basically, it's a way for startups for us to get training, get connections, and get mentorship to about 10 startups in the space that are idea or MVP stage, and help them move the needle. If you are interested in that boot camp, let me know.
We're not doing a formal application process for that one, but we did have an interest form that we sent out via our newsletter. So we've captured who's interested.
Dan, just send me an update since you have my email, and then I'll add it to the list. Oh, one thing that I did want to mention, and we haven't formally talked about this as well, but I know that informally we've been talking about, when we're looking at teams, I think we're going to really start looking closely through the lens of diversity and inclusion. Certainly, as for the cohort as a whole, but looking specifically at each of the startups and what they're doing to make sure that their teams are diverse and inclusive.
Yeah, I'll this. It's 2019, y'all, and you're applying for the 2020 cohort. And the demographics of pet owners in the United States are very diverse. So all white male teams are not our favorite.
Yeah. Are there limitations on B2B agreements, Mars competitors for program participants? I don't think so. As long as those agreements are okay with working with us. Leap is a project of Kinship and Mars Pet Care, and so and I don't think that that's come up at all.
Yeah, I mean, historically, Mars has been very open to having, for example, companies in the LEAP cohort who've been part of the Purina Innovation Prize, or who have been talking to other companies for other reasons. And I can think of a couple in the cohorts that are. So I can't think of something that is disqualifying. Now, if you have signed a huge, super exclusive deal, please disclose that so that we can flag it and make sure that it's not going to be an issue. But at least to date, that has not been a problem. The question, what do we have to present to apply for the studio? So there's a series of questions, and it's the basics of, who are you and what do you do and how do you do it? And it's all of the same kinds of things that you might present to somebody if you were seeking angel funding, or those kinds of things. Asad, do you want to elaborate? The application will be up in less than 2 weeks.
Yeah. It'll be very similar for those who apply to our pitch competition. I would say it's, I certainly will ask for a deck, and then there'll be questions about all aspects of your business plan. And then there'll be a place for you to put a video in. And typically people put in a video of their product or showcasing, they're demoing their product. I would say that if you've applied to anything before, you would probably have, the answers are already done, but it'll take most people maybe an hour or two to apply, I would guess.
So Dan, the boot camp is, I guess we haven't really talked about US versus international. If the challenge is that it's going to be on site in LA. So for international companies, if you're interested and if you think it makes sense for you to invest your time and resources that way to be in LA for a month, we're open to considering you.
And just to add to that, I would say that we actually have a lot of interest from international companies, and we haven't disqualified anybody because of that thus far. What other questions do we have out there?
We do not cover costs for the boot camp. We cover the content, but not airfare, lodging. You've got to handle that on your own. All good questions, you guys. Thank you for asking great questions that future people who view this webinar recording will benefit from.
So the pitch, Matt is asking about the pitch competition, how it works, and which program does it apply to. So the pitch competitions are independent programs, and so we're trying to run and coordinate, or sponsor 4 of them over the course of the year. And so the first one is at Super Zoo, and that one we were in control of the application process. And so it was an application process. We selected the top six, and the 6 pitched, and one won a $15,000 equity free prize. The next one that we're involved with will be at the Veterinary Innovation Summit at Colorado State. we're sponsoring that. We'll also be a judge, but anybody can join that competition by, I think, paying their event fee, and then we'll help kind of coordinate the finalists and judge on the winners.
So to be clear with that one, which is a little different, is it's their event that we're helping, and it's a more veterinary audience, and they are choosing the startups to pitch from companies that are exhibiting at the event. So in that case, it's a little bit different. And then VMX, which will be the next one in January, is also a little different. So again, that's why you want to get on the email list and follow us, because we will announce the details for each of those as they come up, and they may all look a little different depending on who we're partnering with, which event we're hosting at, etc.
Amy, I have a question for you. Of the 12 companies that have gone through the program, how many of them did we have a prior relationship in some way, shape, or form with?
Oh gosh, well, the companies for Cohort 1, we didn't have a prior relationship with any of them. I think for Ben, who had been in the industry, he was aware of some of them, but all of those were essentially new. And then for Cohort 2, I would say about half of them had been on our radar from our screening process for Cohort 1. And as part of the screening process, Dylan or Ben and I or various folks had spoken to a lot of companies for Cohort 1. So about half of them had been on our radar, but not ready, or for whatever reason, Cohort 1 wasn't a good fit. And then about half of them were new out there doing this until they applied or until they popped up in our industry diligence process for Cohort 2. How are the portfolio companies doing after finishing the program? Well, 100% of them are still around, so that's the first yay. Nobody's gone out of business. They're all doing well. So for example, Wild Earth, which was pre-launch when they came into Cohort 1, not only has launched their treats, but they've now launched their food. They just had a big launch event that we worked with them on last weekend, 2 weekends ago in Los Angeles. Same thing, Mix Lab is getting ready to expand into their second market on the West Coast. Lacuna is getting ready for another fundraising round and has continued to get traction in placing their units. So all of these companies are still around, still in business, still working hard, getting traction, growing. I think, I don't have the number off the tip of my tongue, but we can compile how much funding has been raised, because many of these groups have closed a funding round since they were part of the studio.
I can add to this. So I think they've raised 48 million, the 12 companies over the course of their life. Of that, about half has come after they've graduated from our program.
Same thing, Jiminy's, which is the cricket protein. Their food is about to come out. They just had a very successful exhibition at Super Zoo. Sniff Spot is growing. Pet Relief is blowing up. All of them are doing well. Smalls is expanding SKUs and sort of shifting how they position themselves in the market. Shameless is working on some major. One of the things that's unique about them is that they're in food, drug, and mass. And so they're getting some major distribution partners. So everybody is doing well. Sarah asks, how would you define a successful program after it has finished? That's going to look a little bit different for every company, but we want you all to get value from the program. So if you got value, if you move forward with your business model, if you move forward with your business, if you have mentors and relationships that you're going to use going forward, and you feel confident and excited about what's next for you and your path for the next 12 months, we consider that a success.
Yeah. I think for us, from my perspective, in addition to that, is getting startups a seat at the table that they otherwise wouldn't have gotten, and that whether that's investing or partnership or whatever, I would say that that's a huge success, and that doesn't happen necessarily during the program. It could happen afterwards as well. We're coming up to the end of the hour, so if there's maybe one more question from the audience, otherwise we will end it here, and you guys have a way to connect with us.
Dan, I'm not sure what your question is about Sniff Spot, but we'll wrap it up. And Assad will get these materials and the recording link out to you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.